In this series, I'm going to debunk some of the biggest fibs in British history. In the 17th century, politicians and artists helped turn a foreign invasion into the triumphal tale of Britain's glorious revolution.
March 24th, 1603. Queen Elizabeth I, England's last Tudor monarch, breathed her last at Richmond Palace. Kazmi, a young historian trying to piece together centuries of royal intrigue, wonders how one queen's death could ripple through the ages. In Scotland, King James VI learns of his distant cousin's passing, an opportunity wrapped in uncertainty. No one had confirmed he would succeed, yet the English throne waits, vacant and tense. The House of Stuart is poised to enter a kingdom long shaped by shifting dynasties, foreign bloodlines, and wars that change borders and loyalties. But the story doesn't start here. Centuries earlier, Viking raids, Welsh resistances, and the ambitions of kings like Alfred and Athelstan set the stage for England itself. Every crown, every heir, every betrayal threads together a tale of power, survival, and ambition. Stay with us as we uncover the hidden twists of England's royal dynasties and reveal the secrets they tried to bury. The roots of power. Kazmi opens his notebook, pencil hovering over a sketch of King Alfred. Each line of Alfred's face seems to tell a story of battles fought, of cities defended, and of a man carrying the weight of a kingdom on his shoulders.
Of King Alfred's country, that glorious bit of England around Wantage in Berkshire, where the Royal Alfred was born in the year 849.
Alfred the Great ruled in the 9th century, a time when England was not the country we know today. It was a land under constant threat from Viking invasions, where small villages and towns could vanish overnight, leaving only smoke and ruin behind. Yet Alfred was more than just a warrior. He was a strategist, a scholar, and a visionary. He studied the ways of his enemies, reorganized his armies, and created fortified towns, burhs to protect his people. While Kazmi imagines Alfred pacing through his wooden halls, maps spread on the table, planning every defensive move, knowing that the survival of a nation rested in his decisions. Alfred's contribution was not only in defense, but in shaping the idea of a united English kingdom. He promoted education, revived laws, and encouraged the use of English in writing so that knowledge could be preserved and shared. Kazmi reflects on how one man's vision could alter the course of a nation. Without Alfred, England might have fractured into small, warring territories long before any other dynasty could rise. Centuries later, Kazmi turns his attention to another dramatic shift, the arrival of William of Normandy. The year is 1066, and the air is thick with tension as the Battle of Hastings looms. Kazmi sketches the scene, ships lined across the channel, soldiers readying their armor, horses stamping the ground impatiently. William, known later as William the Conqueror, did not just bring his army, he brought a new era. His victory reshaped the English monarchy forever. Castles rose from the earth, symbolizing Norman authority. Feudal systems were introduced, ensuring loyalty from nobles through land and titles. The language of the court changed overnight as Norman French became the tongue of power, forever influencing English culture. Kazmi wonders how a single battle, fought on a hillside in Sussex, could ripple through centuries of history, changing traditions, governance, and even everyday life. Dynasties often emerged from chaos, Kazmi notes. Power was fragile, and every ruler had to constantly prove legitimacy. Bloodlines were intertwined through strategic marriages. Non-alliances were forged and broken, and rebellions tested loyalty. Alfred's careful strategies to unite his lands, combined with William's ambitious conquest, set the stage for generations of intrigue, ambition, and political maneuvering. Each king or queen would inherit not just territory, but a legacy of struggle, a throne that was never guaranteed, and a kingdom constantly in flux. Kazmi pauses, feeling the weight of centuries in his hands. The story of England's monarchy is not a simple tale of rulers sitting on thrones. It is a saga of survival, intelligence, courage, and adaptability. From Alfred's visionary leadership to William's transformative conquest, the monarchy evolved through fire, steel, and calculated wisdom. Every corner of England bears the imprint of these early kings, the fortified towns, the castles, the laws, and even the language itself. As Kazmi flips the page, he realizes that understanding these roots is essential to understanding the entire history of English royalty. Without Alfred and William, the monarchy as we know it today would not exist. The echoes of their decisions still resonate, centuries later, shaping power, legacy, and the very identity of a nation. The Tudor turmoil, Kazmi's notebook flips again, this time landing on a figure larger than life, Henry VIII. The portraits seem to glare from the pages, a king whose presence fills the room even centuries later. Henry was not just a ruler, he was a force of nature.
This is the story of a royal court that changed the world. Above it all, Henry VIII, the tyrant king.
He was brutal, he was ruthless, he was probably the most selfish king we've ever had.
His personality was as unpredictable as the storms that sometimes swept across England's coastlines, and his appetite for power rivaled his legendary temper. Kazmi's pencil traces the lines of Henry's jaw, either imagining the conversations that could make or break nations. Every decision he made seemed personal, every marriage a political chess move. Jane Seymour's brief time as queen left an indelible mark with the birth of the long-awaited son. Each woman's story is a testament to the price of ambition, the fragility of favor, and the brutal reality of royal life. Kazmi feels the tension of a court, where every whisper could mean downfall and every smile could hide a dagger. As the pages turn, Kazmi encounters Elizabeth I, the daughter who would inherit not just the throne, but the weight of an entire nation. Unlike her father, Elizabeth ruled alone in a world dominated by men, yet her independence became her strength. Kazmi pauses at the lines describing her early years. A princess under suspicion, a girl marked by danger, a young woman learning the careful art of survival. Elizabeth's intelligence and caution became her armor. She navigated court politics with a mixture of charm and cunning, understanding that the throne could be lost to a single misstep. Kazmi's notes detail the foreign threats she faced, from France to Spain, and the endless conspiracies within her own court. The most famous challenge, the Spanish Armada of 1588, was more than a battle at sea. It was a test of Elizabeth's ability to inspire, strategize, and lead a kingdom under the shadow of annihilation. Kazmi sketches the ships, the waves, the faces of sailors bracing for combat, imagining Elizabeth in her council room, calm but calculating, giving orders that could determine the fate of England. He considers the delicate balance she had to maintain between appearing strong and avoiding unnecessary wars, between asserting authority and keeping her subjects loyal. The Tudor dynasty was far more than a line of rulers. It was a crucible of endurance, intelligence, and survival. Kazmi's research shows that every decision carried risks, religious reforms that alienated powerful groups, alliances that could turn enemies into threats, and marriages that could either strengthen or destabilize the monarchy. The Church of England, born out of Henry's conflicts and desires, left its mark on every corner of English society, shaping the nation's faith, politics, and culture. Elizabeth's long reign further defined what it meant to rule with resilience. Her ability to hold the throne, protect her people, and navigate a volatile Europe made her one of history's most remarkable monarchs. Kazmi's curiosity deepens as he traces the ripple effects of the Tudors' choices. How did Henry's break with Rome affect ordinary citizens centuries later? How did Elizabeth's diplomacy ensure England's survival against seemingly impossible odds? Every marriage, every rebellion, every political maneuver becomes a thread in a tapestry that defines the nation. Kazmi reflects on the paradox of power, that the same throne offering privilege and glory also brought isolation, fear, and constant vigilance. Even now, Kazmi feels the presence of these rulers as if they are whispering across time. The Tudors, with all their triumphs and tragedies, shaped not only a dynasty but an identity. England's sense of itself, its position in Europe, or in its cultural and religious landscape were all molded by this period of turmoil and brilliance. Kazmi closes his notebook with a sense of awe, realizing that the story of the Tudors is a story of survival, ambition, and legacy. Their lives were messy, dangerous, and unpredictable, but their impact is undeniable, echoing across the centuries, reminding every observer that monarchy is never simple and power is never without cost. The Stuarts in Civil Shadow's Kazmi flips the page, and the air seems heavier here, charged with tension and whispers of a dynasty that changed the course of English history. The Stuarts arrive on his notebook like storm clouds over calm waters. James I, the first of the line, inherits not only the English crown, but also the Scottish throne, uniting two kingdoms in name, but not in heart. Kazmi's pen hovers over the words as he reflects on James's struggle to balance two very different nations. His reign promises unity, but the undercurrents of tension are impossible to ignore. Nobles and ministers question his decisions. Ordinary citizens murmur about religious disputes that seem endless. Kazmi imagines the palace corridors echoing with secret arguments, letters smuggled in candlelight, and alliances forged not by friendship, but by necessity. James's vision of himself as a divine ruler clashes with the rising power of Parliament. Every attempt at asserting authority is met with resistance. Kazmi scribbles notes about the gunpowder plot of 1605, when Guy Fawkes and conspirators tried to destroy Parliament. The event, steeped in secrecy and danger, signals a kingdom on edge. Religion is not merely a matter of faith.
Guy Fawkes is the name we associate most closely with the plot. When, at about midnight on the 4th of November 1605, a search party discovered him, lurking in the vaults beneath the House of Lords.
It is power, control, and survival. Protestants, Catholics, and Puritans all vie for influence, their debates spilling into streets, markets, and courts. Kazmi senses the weight of history pressing down. The monarchy is no longer simply a symbol, it is a battleground. As the pages turn, Charles I emerges a figure both regal and stubborn, ambitious yet blind to the growing storm. Kazmi's notes detail how Charles's insistence on divine right, heavy taxation, and strict religious policies alienates allies and sparks rebellion. Parliament refuses to yield, and soon the country teeters on the edge of civil war. Kazmi can almost hear the clash of muskets, the cries of men torn between loyalty to king and conscience. The English Civil War is not just battles and sieges, it is a clash of ideas, a fight over the very definition of authority. Citizens, soldiers, and nobles alike are caught in a web where choosing sides could mean survival or death. Kazmi traces the shocking climax. Charles I becomes the first reigning king in English history to be executed. The notes pause on the date, January 30th, 1649, as if the page itself mourns the loss. The execution is more than an event. It is a seismic shift that shakes the very foundations of monarchy. Kazmi reflects on the audacity and the fear, imagining the faces of onlookers, some in horror, some in silent relief. Power is no longer untouchable. It is fragile, questioned, and now mortal. Then comes the era of Oliver Cromwell and the Commonwealth. Kazmi writes of England without a king, a kingdom under the rule of a man who carries the authority of Parliament. Streets, towns, and courts adapt to this new order, while royalists cling to memories of gilded halls and inherited titles. The absence of monarchy is striking. Kazmi's pen traces the temporary fall and the cultural, religious, and political upheavals that ripple through the nation. It is a time of strict laws, moral policing, and experimental governance. Yet it is also a period that tests the resilience of England's identity. Finally, the restoration of Charles II brings relief, celebration, and cautious optimism. Kazmi reflects on how the monarchy returns, altered and wary, aware that power is not inherited alone, but must be constantly negotiated with society. Charles II is charming, indulgent, and politically savvy, learning lessons his father could not. The court thrives with intrigue, parties, and secretive alliances. Yet under every festivity lies the shadow of history's warnings, that power is never static, loyalty is never guaranteed, and the people's voice can never be ignored. Through all these events, Kazmi sees a pattern. Each Stuart reign, with its triumphs and disasters, reshapes England. The monarchy is a living entity, tested by ambition, rebellion, and the fragile line between tradition and change. Wars are fought, laws are challenged, and bloodlines are questioned. But through it all, the story of England unfolds in layers of suspense, drama, and enduring fascination. The winds of change. Kazmi leans closer to his notes, tracing the arrival of George I on English soil. A man from Hanover, he speaks little English and knows even less about the customs and politics of this strange new kingdom. Yet here he is, crowned King of England, heir expected to rule a nation centuries older and far more complex than his homeland. Kazmi imagines the confusion in the palace. Courtiers whispering in French and English, ministers trying to guide a king who cannot even follow their advice fully. George I relies heavily on ministers, and slowly the seeds of a modern parliamentary monarchy begin to take root. It is a period of adaptation, one where tradition clashes with necessity, and the crown learns to navigate its limits. Kazmi scribbles notes on how loyalty and power are no longer inherited automatically. They must be managed, negotiated, and carefully maintained. The pages shift to George III, whose long reign brings both triumph and turmoil. Kazmi studies the king's struggle with the American colonies, a rebellion that challenges the very idea of the monarchy's reach. While George dreams of loyalty and obedience, the world outside Britain is changing rapidly. Industrialization begins to transform cities, economies, and daily life. Factories hum, steam engines roar, and the monarchy faces the challenge of remaining relevant in a world speeding toward modernity. Kazmi notes the paradox of George's rule, an era marked by innovation and expansion, yet shadowed by personal struggles, mental health crises, and the growing demands of a restless populace. The king's human vulnerabilities become part of the historical story, a reminder that even crowns cannot shield against the pressures of progress and expectation. Kazmi turns the page to Queen Victoria, a young woman who will grow into a symbol of an entire age. Ascending the throne at just 18, Victoria carries the weight of the empire on her shoulders. While Kazmi pauses to sketch the image of the young queen, determined, poised, and burdened with responsibility. Her reign oversees unprecedented industrial growth, cultural change, and global influence. Yet behind the pomp and ceremony, Victoria's life is filled with personal dramas, strained family relations, tragedies, and political challenges that require careful diplomacy. Kazmi notes how Victoria's character, strength, and moral authority become intertwined with the identity of Britain itself. She does not just rule, she embodies a nation navigating a world of railways, colonies, and scientific discovery, while also confronting the expectations of propriety, loyalty, and imperial duty. By the time Kazmi reaches George V, the world itself has shifted dramatically. 2 world wars test the monarchy in ways unimaginable to earlier rulers. Whenever Kazmi traces how the crown adapts, focusing less on absolute authority and more on stability, symbolism, and public perception. Kings and queens are no longer untouchable figures. Their survival depends on the trust of the people, the respect of Parliament, and the careful cultivation of an image both regal and relatable. Kazmi sketches the public appearances, speeches, and ceremonies, understanding that monarchy is evolving into an institution of continuity rather than command. Finally, Kazmi arrives at the House of Windsor, a dynasty that faces both modernity and scrutiny. The monarchy continues, but now its relevance is tested daily by media, politics, and public opinion. The Windsors navigate scandals, personal tragedies, and the delicate balance between tradition and change. Kazmi notes how the lessons of Hanover and Victoria resonate. Adaptability, resilience, and the constant negotiation between private life and public duty define survival. The crown has transformed, surviving wars, revolutions, and social upheaval, proving that while absolute power fades, the influence of history, ceremony, and continuity endures. Through this journey, Kazmi realizes that from George I to the Windsors, the monarchy has evolved not merely by birthright, but through the relentless pressures of society, war, and progress. Each reign, each decision, and each public gesture shapes the narrative of England itself, a story of survival, adaptation, and the subtle art of holding power in a changing world. And as Kazmi closes his notebook, the story is far from over. The winds of change continue to blow, carrying with them new challenges, new figures, and new chapters in the tale of a monarchy that refuses to fade. Modern monarchy Kazmi flips through the pages and stops at Elizabeth II, her portrait staring back from history books and newspaper clippings alike. He pauses, almost as if the Queen herself is observing his notes. Elizabeth ascended the throne in 1952, a young woman barely in her 20s, suddenly carrying the weight of an empire and the hopes of a nation recovering from the scars of war. Kazmi sketches the young queen's determined expression and reflects on how her reign would stretch across decades of dramatic change. Unlike her predecessors, she would not fight battles with swords or claim authority through sheer force. Her power would be subtler, built on duty, consistency, and the quiet influence of example. Kazmi can almost hear the echoes of her coronation, the hush of the cathedral, the whispered prayers, and the collective gaze of a nation pinned on a single figure. Through the 1950s and 1960s, Britain faced transformation at home and abroad. Kazmi traces the decline of the empire, the independence of colonies, and the rise of new nations once under British rule. Elizabeth navigates these changes with poise, understanding that the monarchy must adapt or risk irrelevance. Even in an era of television, mass media, and growing public scrutiny, she emerges as a figure who inspires respect rather than fear. Every royal engagement, every public speech, and every carefully chosen gesture is a lesson in strategy, restraint, and the long game of leadership. Family life, Kazmi observes, is never private for a monarch. The Queen experiences joys and heartbreaks under the unforgiving eyes of the world. Marriages, divorces, and scandals within the royal family play out on global screens, testing both public perception and personal resilience. Kazmi scribbles the names of Charles, Anne, Andrew, and Edward, reflecting on how each story intertwines with the monarchy's image. Yet Elizabeth endures, using wisdom, patience, and a strong sense of duty to shield the crown from being overshadowed by personal drama. Her role becomes both symbolic and strategic, a living bridge between history and the modern state, embodying continuity even in turbulent times. Internationally, Elizabeth shapes diplomacy not through treaties alone, but through presence, ceremony, and the soft power of example. Kazmi notes her state visits, on interactions with presidents and prime ministers.
This opportunity of welcoming my prime ministers and ministers,
and subtle guidance of foreign policy through relationships rather than direct intervention. Every handshake, every meeting, every appearance carries weight, weaving tradition with modernity in a way few leaders manage. Kazmi marvels at the quiet authority she commands without ever issuing direct commands, showing that influence can be as powerful as legislation or military might. As the years progress, Kazmi records the transformation of public expectations. Media, social change, and politics demand transparency and adaptability. The monarchy faces criticism, yet the institution survives, reinventing itself subtly to remain relevant. Kazmi notes initiatives like the opening of royal estates to the public, charitable engagement, and adaptation to modern communication tools. Elizabeth uses to maintain a connection with her people. Even ceremonial duties are carefully curated, blending spectacle with meaningful symbolism. Through it all, the Queen maintains an almost invisible hand, guiding the monarchy's image, balancing visibility and restraint, tradition and change. Finally, Kazmi steps back and sees Elizabeth II not merely as a monarch, but as the embodiment of resilience. Through decades of upheaval, social change, and global shifts, she remains a figure of stability, her reign a testament to the enduring nature of monarchy. Kazmi realizes that every story from medieval battles to modern state visits is a thread in a vast tapestry of power, identity, and survival. The crown continues, constantly adapting, yet firmly rooted in centuries of history. And as Kazmi closes his notebook, he knows that while Elizabeth's reign defines modern monarchy, the story of England's royal family is far from finished. New challenges, new rulers, and new chapters await. The monarchy survives because it learns, evolves, and endures, bridging the past with the present in ways that continue to shape Britain and the world. From Alfred's wooden halls to Elizabeth II's Buckingham Palace, England's monarchy tells a story of ambition, struggle, and resilience. Kazmi closes his notebook, reflecting on centuries of kings and queens who shaped a nation. Bloodlines, battles, betrayals, and brilliant minds all played a part, and yet the story is far from over. The lessons of the past echo today, reminding us that power is fragile, legacy is earned, and history always holds surprises. As we step back from centuries of dynasties, remember the crown is more than gold. It is a story of human ambition, devotion, and endurance. Stay with us as we continue to uncover the secrets, scandals, and truths of England's royal families. The past waits to reveal itself, and each chapter brings a new twist you won't want to miss.